Hello again. Welcome back to another Kingdom Builders Credit Repair, Credit and Financial Tips with me, Michelle Green. I am so excited that you are here. Make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel at Kingdom Builders Credit Repair, and also make sure you are connected with us everywhere else at kb.michellegreen, for we are powered by the CTR Media Network. And I'm telling y'all, there are millions and billions of people that are watching right now. So we want to make sure that we get the word out. This is a new TV show. So we want to share with everybody so that they will understand how to handle their credit and how to handle their finances. All right. As some of you know, I've been doing finances and credit for over 30 plus years. So the reason why we decided to create this whole channel is because we know that people are concerned about their credit and about their finances. So today we're going to dive into the subject matter of student loan debt. But before we do, as always, every Friday from 12:30 to 1, we have to start by talking about how credit works in the first place. So when we look at credit, what is credit? Credit is something that we get to choose through a financial institution that has some money that we don't have. So when we think about credit, we always want to think of it from the perspective or the angle that, okay, I'm working, maybe I just started working, maybe I got a new job, maybe I lost my job, maybe I have a new business, maybe I'm starting out fresh, maybe I have been in business for a long time. But regardless of the scenario of how you are accruing your income, what happens is that when we start working and earning an income, we realize that we don't have enough money to pay for the things that we want to achieve or that we would like to have. So therefore, credit is a very crucial thing. It's actually up there with oxygen. Y'all hear that? Inhale and exhale. That's where credit is on the status of our finances and our well-being in our portfolios. Okay, so we want to understand that it's not just something that, okay, well, we could or couldn't have. It's literally something that is clearly in the financial arena, something that we must have, and we must have a good credit score. So today we're going to talk about the student loans and how it affects your credit, and also to give you some tips that you can walk away from knowing and feeling more confident that you are in control of your credit as it pertains to the student loan debt. So as we talk about the student loans, I want us to think about, everybody wants to be educated in the world. Every single person in the world needs education because education gives us power. And when we have knowledge and understanding about something, there is a saying that what you don't know won't hurt you, but it actually will hurt you. And so what we want to establish with that is that understanding we have to be educated. We need to gain new knowledge as we're growing and learning, because whenever you decide that you're going to stop learning and growing, you don't have the opportunity to grow and expand and increase in your life. So we know that knowledge and education is very important. But I don't think that we really learn or understand it from a financial credit perspective. So when we look at it from a credit perspective, what we have to first understand is what kind of loans can we obtain. So when we are going through the process of going through the financial aid services, which is FAFSA, when we go through the federal financial aid services programs, we have to establish if we're even in a position to gain a student loan. So that's the first stage, is filling out the application for federal aid. So we go through that process, and sometimes we get approved, sometimes we don't get approved based on our credit score. And once we do get approved, or we have to get a co-signer, what we're saying is that we are indebted pretty much for life, because these are not your regular types of debt when it comes to student loan debt. Student loan debt is something that is established by the government in some way or another. So even if you have a service provider, which is the company that says that they will finance your educational loan through, let's say, Nelnet or Navient or Aidvantage, whomever it is, Sally Mae back in the day, but they've changed their name and they've moved forward. So no matter who the student loan service provider is that's going to finance your loans, what we have to understand is that when it comes to credit, every single student loan is in some way connected to the government. Now, that is really important for us to understand, because if we understand that every student loan that is connected to the government in some way or another is going to impact our credit for the lifetime of us being on this earth. That means that either you pay off the debt or either you be indebted for student loans pretty much forever. Now, there are some solutions that we have in our credit repair program for student loan debt. Definitely a way for us to learn how to manage our student loan debt. But today we want to talk about the effects of that student loan debt. So we want to dive into, first of all, the student loan impact that has happened pretty much in today's society and over the last 5 years. So over the last 5 years, we've been going through what we call a deferment, a forbearance, or some type of income-based repayment plan option. So I want to first break down the forgiveness debt. What does it mean for a student loan to be forgiven? So we get into this process of getting educated. We're going through the process of actually taking on a educational loan, right? And then what happens is the loan, every time that we go to school, every time that we go through a semester or a quarter, the student loan is going to kick out a certain amount for that particular semester or quarter on our credit reports. So even though you may think that, okay, I'm only being financed for the year, we're actually being financed for the quarter. And every time we have a new quarter or a new semester, there will be a new loan that will appear on our credit report. So let's just wrap our heads around that first, because we need to understand that when we are getting an education, when we are going to school and we are learning more and progressing in our jobs or progressing in our businesses, or just progressing in life. So we would have more information about how to do the different skills, gifts, and talents. Okay. We have to understand that that student loan is not just a lump sum on our credit reports. It is broken down basically in between the increments that we have gone to school. So you could go to school for 4 years and have 16 to 20 different loans showing up on your credit report. Ooh, oh my God, Michelle, that is overwhelming. I know. We see it all the time with our hundreds of thousands of clients that come through our organization all the time. So we understand the frustration of, or even the shock when you hear and you see for yourself that on your credit report, there are several different student loans that you didn't even know was happening while you were going to school. So let's just first establish that first entryway into student loan debt. It is not a lump sum of debt that is added to our credit after we graduate. It is a lump sum of debt that is added in increments, small increments, or sometimes large increments, depending on what school of choice that we are getting the education from. So that's why it is important for us, before we just jump into the student loan arena, that we decide on what we're going to school for, and making sure that what we choose to go to school for is something that we really are going to take serious and progress in eventually over time, to have either a job or a business in that arena. Not to just go to school and decide that we're going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, because I'm telling you right now, what we see on the credit report is an average of about $250,000 of each person that goes to school to get an education in student loan debt. That is a significantly a large amount of money That is so big. That's so huge. So I want you to understand that this game of getting an education is not something that you should take lightly. It should be as important as you would think about going to purchase a home. You wouldn't just go out there and purchase a home just because somebody else decided that they wanted to purchase a home, right? So why in the world would you decide that you would start to get an education that could cost you anywhere from $250,000 all the way up to even millions of dollars on your credit report? Why would you decide that you would do that in relation to being able to, just decide, okay, well, I'm just going to go to school and I'm just going to pay this money for my kid or for myself, or for a parent even? I would not put myself into that kind of debt knowing that I'm not even sure about what it is that I want to do. So take some time to really understand the beginning stage process of a student loan. We are not just doing the student loan because we think it's a good idea and everybody else is doing it. We're doing the student loan because we are sure and certain that this is what we want to be educated in to further our incomes later on in life by having the licenses or the degrees or whatever it is that we need, the certifications, so that we can obtain more wealth. Okay, so let's just put that hands down. Now, secondly, the people that are financing the student loan debt, they have several different options on how you can pay that money back. So let's say on average, like I said, $250,000, even if we bring that down a little bit to about $100,000. So we're talking about $25,000 per year. So that's going to be $100,000 in 4 years of going to college or going to a university or school of some kind to get your education. All right. So whoever the service provider is, they have the right to change their name. They have the right to change the rules within the actual loan. So one of the things that they tell you is that go ahead and get the education now. While you're going to school, we are going to defer your payments. That means that you don't have to pay on the student loan debt while you're going to school. But what does that mean in actuality for you when a loan is deferred? What that means is that we're pausing the money that you have to pay back, and this money that we are pausing while you are going to school to get the education is going to accrue interest. Now, when COVID happened, back in 2020, when COVID happened, there was a pause and delay on the interest that would be accruing on the debt. Now, let's talk about that to make sure everybody understands what that actually means. If you have a $25,000 loan for each year, that means that the $25,000, while you're not paying on the debt, is going to accrue anywhere from, I'd say, $1,000 to maybe $5,000 or even $10,000 more, based on the fact that you are not paying on the debt for so many amount of years. So that's why it's so important for us to understand that even though we are going through the educational process of getting our, learning whatever it is that we learn, and we're not concerned that much about paying for the debt right now, when we don't concern ourselves with paying for the debt, it allows us to be indebted even more, because as you defer the loans, what happens is you're going to have to pay more money back for that same 25,000 just because you chose not to pay on the debt right now. So a deferment is simply where you're telling the creditor that, hey, I'm not going to do it right now, but I'm going to do it later after I graduate, and maybe even give me some extra time after I graduate to pay it so that I would be able to position myself to get a job in the field that I went to school for so that I can pay for the debt. Well, that leads me to my second point. So the first point is that getting a deferment means that you're putting a pause on the amount of debt that you're going to owe over the period of you going to school. But when you get out, that same $25,000 have now turned into $35,000 a year. So that's how we end up going from $100,000 of student loan debt as a principal balance into an interest that has been accrued over 4 to 5 years or however long you're going to school, and it's going to turn into a $250,000 debt at the end of the whole equation or more. Okay, so let's look at the second option that we have. We have the second option of having a forbearance. So what is a forbearance? Forbearance is also for allowing us, after we have gone to college, going to that university, gotten the education, and we are deciding that, okay, now the student loan service provider is telling us that, hey, we got to pay on the student loans because we've already deferred it for 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, or however long we've been going to school. So now the forbearance kicks in, which says that basically there was some type of emergency to where you weren't positioned to really pay for that debt after you graduated. So a forbearance would allow you to pause your payments, but interest is still going to accrue on the loan, even if you have what we call a subsidized loan. So in general, what we want to understand is that regardless of whether we are doing a deferment or a forbearance, that we are still accruing interest on the loan. So the forbearance may only be for a 6-month period of time. The forbearance may be only for a year time or maybe a couple of years. Now, during the COVID season, from 2020 to 2025, what has happened is that we haven't been paying on anything. Everything has pretty much been in a state of forbearance. Okay, so that means that many of us didn't know when we were supposed to pay on our student loan debt because there was no information really relayed to us other than from the service provider, and your service provider may have changed from one company to another. So I don't want us to get caught up into that mindset either of assuming that just because one company took over the loan from the previous company, that now we don't owe the student loan debt. That is a lie. The student loans, when you sign up for the application of the actual loan through the federal government, what it establishes is that the student loans are liable to change from company to company. So that is another thing that we kind of get confused about. But back to the student loans. After we have graduated, now our loans are in forbearance. So from 2020 to 2025, the government has been coming up with all of these different solutions of being able to forgive our student loan debt. Well, I want to just stop right here and add to the equation of the student loan debt that there are different types of forgiveness options. And while we have been in the forbearance stage or the deferment stage, depending on where you're at in your education journey, we have to understand that there are new rules and regulations that are happening as we speak. One of the major things that I want us to understand is that the student loans that were deferred, that were in forbearance, or that were considered for being forgiven, which means that all of your debt or 80% of your student loan debt would be wiped away. That means you wouldn't have to pay that regardless of how much you owed or how many payments you put into it at all. All of that means when you say forgiveness, it means literally that most of your debt, if not all of your debt, will be completely taken away. It will be wiped off by the government. But there were only certain requirements for people who could gain forgiveness. You had to have a certain type of scenario in your life. For example, you would have had to work for a public service type of organization that is connected to the government. A public service that could be like your teachers, it could be someone that works for a nonprofit organization and have been there for 10 years. It could be someone who is disabled. It could be someone who went to the military and now they are retired from the military. It could be different scenarios of why you would receive the forgiveness. But the issue right now that we are facing is that the forgiveness delay is coming to an end. So in other words, the forbearance the deferment and the forgiveness options as of May the 5th, y'all are hearing me, of 2025, there will no longer be any delays on waiting to see if your student loan debt is forgiven. Oh my goodness, this is a really big thing. This is a really big thing that we really need to understand. What does that mean for us? It means literally that if you have student loan debt and you have been under the forgiveness, deferment, or the deferment option, okay, then this means that no longer is your loan going to be deferred, or no longer is your loan going to necessarily be in forbearance, or no longer are you going to be even considered for the forgiveness without the penalty of having to be sent to collections. That's what that means. So we already talked about how significant going to collections is. It's usually a 100-point drop on your credit report. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we got to contact our service providers to find out when is the actual loan due. Because see, the significance about a student loan being that it's connected to the government, there is no way for you to get around that without your wages being garnished, without them taking your Social Security check, without them deciding that if you are a business owner, putting you under some type of lien or some type of judgment. And those are things that we call public records that will affect your personal credit. So you definitely don't want to be in the position to where you are waiting around trying to allow someone like a service provider to just randomly contact you about the debt that you have accrued for your education. You want to take the initiative, be proactive, and go forward with the student loan debt to make sure that you're calling the service provider. If it's with NailNet, if it's with Navient, if it's with AidVantage, if it's with the Department of Education, whomever your student loan is set up through, you need to call your service provider immediately. You need to make sure that your service provider knows the date that your loan is due and when it's going to become real time, that you don't have any other opportunity to pay on that debt or have it deferred, so that you have a correct payment plan in place to pay your student loan debt back. Now, let's talk about this income-based repayment plan option. Income-based repayment plan options are based on the income that you're showing proof of from your taxes. So usually they will pull from your taxes or they will pull from your job's paycheck. So if you don't have either or, then there's going to be a problem, and they could literally say that you make hundreds of thousands of dollars and that your monthly payment is over $1,000 per month. So I want you guys to really begin to hone in on this whole process of student loan debt. We got to take it by the head. We cannot afford to sit around and hope for the student loan debt to just go away, to just disappear, because we've been in the last 5 years in a state of mind where we haven't even contacted the service provider to see what is the total amount of educational debt that we owe. Are there any income-based repayment plans that I can even qualify for? And if I qualify for an income-based repayment plan, it literally means that based on my income, I'm going to have to pay X amount of dollars. Now, there is a new repayment plan called the SAVE. And the SAVE is basically, when Biden was in office as our president of the United States of America, then he was saying that we have the option of getting on the SAVE plan, which allows us to get on a income-based repayment type mindset and not necessarily have to pay a whole lot of money back. But because so many of us have not contacted our service providers, and we don't understand that the service provider's job is not to tell us what's available, but for us to ask the service provider what is available for us as an option to be able to pay our loans back. So the SAVE, SAVE, is one of the options that you have of being able to go to your service provider and say, hey, I want to see if I qualify for the SAVE plan. And if you don't qualify for the SAVE plan, then allow the service provider to do a income-based repayment plan option with you so that you will have the opportunity to pay based on how much money you're earning. Now, when it comes to how much money you're earning, you may not want to show proof that you're making a lot of overtime or you got some side hustles going on. You know, if you have that ability to just show like one payment, it's going to be based on your income. So the more money you make, the more money you will have to pay back. So when we think about our student loans, I want us to really take away from this whole equation that we got to begin to get ahead or get in front of the student loan debt. We cannot allow the student loan debt to take away our livelihood, our inability to be able to purchase a home. Oh, yes, because see, when it comes to buying a home, if you have $250,000 of student loan debt, that is equivalent to a home that you would purchase. So what they would say is if you had to pay back 1 to 2% of that $250,000, let's say 1%, that will be $2,500 a month that you will have to pay that will be included as a part of what we call the debt to income ratio. So based on your income, can you actually afford to fall under the umbrella of 45% of debt that you have to pay back? Can you fall under the umbrella of not having to pay back more than 45% of your income to debtors? So when it comes to you being able to purchase a home, please understand that you may be putting yourself in a really big pickle. You might be putting yourself in a situation to where you would not have the ability to purchase a home simply because you have too much student loan debt, because they are going to look at the total amount of student loan debt that you owe for all of those times that you had a quarter or a semester that was accrued on your student loan. So as a solution to the multiple student loans that occur on your credit based on your quarter or semester, please make sure that you consolidate the loans into one lump sum so that therefore it's just one loan that is accruing one interest rate instead of multiple loans that are accruing several different interest rates. That's right. So that would be another solution. But think about when you're buying a house, if someone looks at your credit, if a financial institution that is considering giving you a house that's $300,000 or more, then they're going to already see that you owe $250,000 or more or less. And whatever that number is, they want to see how quickly you are able to pay it back. They want to see that you have done well with the education of receiving the education, but now what are you doing with the education? So you got to be able to put some money on the debt that you owe for your education. You cannot spend the rest of your life assuming that this debt just should automatically disappear, because it will prevent you from being able to have the type of life that you really want to have. If you're trying to purchase a home, refinance a home, if you're trying to sell a home and buy another home, no matter what the situation is, life changes. And when you have that life change, you definitely don't want to be in a situation where the student loan debt will prevent you from being able to have the best life that you want to have. So I'm here to say, get with Kingdom Builders Credit Repair today. Go ahead to our website, www.kingdombuilderscreditrepair, and click on the little Let's Talk button so that we can get you in a session and take a look at how much debt do you owe, who are you supposed to contact, because we have all of the contact information on the service providers because we see them all the time. We see them every single day. Just about, I would say at least 90%, 90 to 95% of Americans and people in the world are going to school to get an education. But especially in the United States of America, we really want to be the ones who know some stuff, okay? So we got to be the ones that will take charge of our student loan debt so that we can begin to have the kind of credit that we really truly are supposed to have. So let's get on board with figuring out what is the best plan for your student loan debt to be removed, to be paid off, to be forgiven, even after deferment and forbearance. And now it is time for us to close out, but I want to make sure that you have all of the tools and resources that you need so that you can win at the credit game no matter what the circumstances of your life are. So give us a call today, 844 522 7552, or you see the information below. Send us an email at info@kbcrllc.com, or we will be happy for you to go to our website and we'll connect any way possible, even through social media. All right, until next Friday from 12:30 to 1, make sure that you have your notifications set and that you are subscribed, you like, and you share. Until then, thank you for watching and take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody.